Okay, let's just dive right into this. Have you ever noticed how the absolute most intense athletic pursuits out there, they actually feel less like a sequence of matches and way more like this epic, agonizing romance? Well, welcome to today's explainer. We're going to take a really close, deep dive into this totally unexpected intersection of internet culture, emotional music, and grueling athletic ambition. We're analyzing this truly fascinating piece of media today that takes the ultimate quest of one of the greatest athletes in history and just completely recontextualizes it. We are going to look at how a digital creator actually used the structure of a love song to map out a dramatic, decades-long sporting journey. And honestly, it is just a brilliant example of how we use familiar human narratives to make sense of superhuman achievements.
So think about how we usually consume sports, right? Like, how do you measure a sports journey? Usually, it's all about the hard data. We're looking at the statistics, the score lines, the trophy counts, the heat maps, the whole shebang. But for the fans, the people who are literally living and breathing every single match, that traditional analysis often falls completely short. It just doesn't capture the anxiety, the heartbreak, or that deep longing. So, in this explainer, we are going to look at the exact opposite of a stat sheet. We're going to look through a deeply intimate, highly emotional lens used by a fan to frame a grueling athletic quest. And it really proves that sometimes the only way to actually understand a sports narrative is to view it as a love story.
And that brings us directly to our source material for today. It's a YouTube creation by a creator named WarsJR, and it's titled Messi Gives Everything for a Second World Cup, complete with that little bandaged heart emoji. Our goal today is to decode how the transcript of this, which is a surprisingly romantic audio track, allegorically represents Lionel Messi's incredibly dramatic pursuit of the ultimate prize in football. This isn't just, background music thrown together. It is a meticulously chosen narrative. It perfectly aligns with the massive emotional highs and the devastating lows of an athlete chasing the one single trophy that always seemed to just slip away.
Okay, let's move right into the first phase of our metaphorical deconstruction here. Section 1, the illusion of strength. So every great story needs internal conflict, right? And the audio track kicks off with these really striking lyrics. All this time I'm thinking I'm strong enough to see it. I don't need you, but I miss you. Now, think about Messi's journey for a second. For years and years, he wore this psychological armor of having won literally everything else. Multiple Ballon d'Ors, Champions Leagues, just endless domestic titles. There's this facade that an athlete has to maintain, right? The idea of not needing that one elusive World Cup to validate their greatness. But that second half of the lyric, I miss you, that is the quiet, desperate admission of a vulnerability that the public very rarely gets to see. And this brilliantly illustrates the dual meaning going on here. On the one hand, you have the literal meaning of the audio track. It's your classic romantic heartbreak, pretending you're totally over an ex, just masking your vulnerability. But when you frame it through Messi's reality, it becomes about the immense burden of expectations. You essentially have to convince the whole world, and honestly yourself, that you are perfectly fine without the ultimate prize, even when it is the absolutely only thing you truly want. Which brings us to the next chapter of this journey. Section 2, the cycle of heartbreak. Because in sports, exactly like in romance, wanting something doesn't mean you're going to get it on your first, second, or even third try. The transcript loops through these alternating phrases over and over. He loves me not, he holds me tight, then lets me go. And this relentless repetition, it perfectly mirrors the incredibly fickle nature of tournament football. For Messi, this represents a devastating decade-long cycle. We're talking about the crushing 2014 World Cup final loss in extra time. We're talking about the back-to-back Copa America penalty shootout heartbreaks, and that brief, agonizing retirement that followed. It is quite literally a game of pulling petals off a daisy, just waiting to see if football loves him or loves him not. We can define this dynamic really clearly as the push and pull. It's this agonizing emotional cycle that alternates between the intense, soaring hope of victory and the sudden, absolutely devastating sting of elimination. When you analyze a dramatic sporting journey like Messi's, this is hands down the most taxing part. Because it's not just about losing, it's about coming incredibly, painfully close to the trophy. Like touching it with your fingertips, only to have it abruptly and violently slip away. That cycle is just exhausting, both for the athlete on the pitch and the millions of people watching at home. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this exact phrase distills that entire agonizing process into just 8 words. He holds me tight, then lets me go. In a romance, obviously, it's about a partner giving you false hope.
But in sports, it perfectly captures the fleeting, heartbreaking nature of grasping for glory on the world stage. You take the lead, you feel the triumph, the trophy is metaphorically holding you tight, and then a late equalizer happens. You are let go. It is just a profound summary of years of sporting trauma.
But as we know, every great sporting epic absolutely demands an ending. So we arrive at Section 3, the final story resolution.
We can actually trace a really unique emotional progression here across 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is exactly where we started, the distant facade, that I don't need you phase of just masking the desire. Then, step 2 is the grueling agony we just talked about, the push and pull, the he loves me not cycle of failure. And finally, step 3 introduces this radical shift, the morning after, where everything's all right. It really shows how the narrative builds from that initial distance, plunges straight into the depths of agony, and finally ascends to this peaceful, incredibly well-earned resolution.
Let's look a bit closer at that resolution. The lyrics say, "You gonna say you're sorry at the end of the night, wake up in the morning, everything's all right." These words so beautifully signal the end of that agonizing push and pull. I mean, think of the 2022 World Cup final, which is arguably the most chaotic, stressful football match ever played in history. The end of the night brings an apology for all the past suffering, and waking up in the morning brings total emotional closure. It represents this profound sense of calm after the storm. The quest is finally over. The ghost has at long last been put to rest.
And that brings us to the final, incredibly powerful lyric of the transcript. At the end of the story, you're holding me tight. This connects directly back to the very premise of the explainer. The you in this scenario, it's no longer a fickle romantic partner. It is literally the World Cup trophy itself. After years and years of the trophy letting him go, after all the heartbreak and the facade, the journey concludes with the ultimate long-sought embrace. The metaphor achieves total completion here. The athlete and the prize are finally united at the end of the story. So, to summarize, this is exactly why this specific piece of internet culture is so incredibly compelling. The creator, Wars JR, beautifully repurposed this abstract romantic audio track to totally elevate a traditional sports narrative. By mapping lyrics of longing, rejection, and ultimate reconciliation on the Lionel Messi's career, they transformed what could have been a simple highlight reel into a profound tale of redemption. It's just a fantastic reminder that sports aren't just about the physical acts on the pitch. They're really about the deeply human stories we weave around those acts to give them real meaning. Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. Why do we do this? Why do we literally write love songs for our sports heroes? Well, perhaps it's because we have to process the incomprehensible, grueling journeys of these athletes through the most universal human lens we possess, the lens of heartbreak and ultimate devotion. We might never know what it feels like to step onto the pitch in a World Cup final, but we all know what it means to desperately want something, to lose it, and to finally hold it tight. So think about how you view your own heroes' journeys. Do you just see the stats, or do you see the story? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.